In the golden mists of London's dawn, when the first rays of sunlight pierce through the perpetual fog that embraces Diagon Alley, a majestic sight reveals itself to the eyes of those privileged few who know the secrets of the magical world. Rising there, defying both gravity and time, stands Gringotts, not merely a bank, but the beating heart of an entire civilization, the silent guardian of 1,000 years of stories written in gold, blood, and tears. But have you ever wondered why goblins, beings known for their ancestral distrust, became the guardians of the most precious treasures of the magical world? Why even Voldemort, in all his power and arrogance, hesitated before challenging the millennial protections of this place? Today, we will embark together on an extraordinary expedition through the most secret corridors, through the oldest vaults, and through the most terrifying depths of Gringotts. Prepare yourselves to discover truths that will make you question everything you thought you knew about goblins, dragons, and the very concept of magical wealth. And before we dive into the darkest depths of this story, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell. You won't want to miss any detail of this journey. And tell me from which city, from which corner of this magical world you are watching. Our saga begins more than 600 years ago in the frozen mountains of the Carpathians, when Europe was seething with a secret war that Muggle history books never recorded. It was 1463, and a young goblin named Gringott, who would come to be known as the First, the Visionary, or simply the Founder, was about to make a discovery that would forever change not only the destiny of his own species, but the very structure of worldwide magical power. Gringott was not an ordinary goblin. Born into a family of miners who had served dark wizards for entire generations as specialized slaves, he possessed something rare among his kind, an insatiable curiosity that led him to explore abandoned tunnels, forgotten caves, and depths that others considered too dangerous to be investigated. It was during one of his solitary explorations, in the frozen depths of a cave that today lies in current-day Ukraine, a region then devastated by constant conflicts between light and dark wizards, that Gringott made the most extraordinary discovery in magical history. In the deepest bowels of the earth, where pressure and concentrated magical heat had been working for millennia, he found something that defied all known laws of nature. Veins of gold that were not just precious, but literally alive. This enchanted gold, which the goblins called living gold, possessed properties that seemed straight out of the most fantastic dreams of alchemists. It glowed with its own light, that varied in intensity according to the emotions of those who approached. It reacted to pure feelings like love, courage, and loyalty, intensifying its golden glow until it seemed like a small miniature sun. But its most extraordinary property was its natural capacity to repel dark magic with a force that not even the most powerful protection spells could match. When Gringott first touched a piece of this magical gold, he felt a connection that transcended the physical. It was as if the precious metal was whispering ancestral secrets directly into his soul. He instantly understood that he had not simply discovered a new type of gold. He had found the key to the freedom of his people, and perhaps to a future where goblins and wizards could coexist as equals. But like every great discovery in the history of magic, it also attracted the attention of malignant forces. Vlad Tepes III, known to Muggles as Vlad the Impaler, and who would inspire the bloody legends of Dracula, was, in reality, much more than a cruel ruler. He was also one of the most powerful and merciless dark wizards of his era, a master of the darkest arts who had made diabolical pacts with forces that dwelt beyond the veil of death. When Vlad's spies, a sinister network of corrupted wizards and dark creatures, brought news about the enchanted gold discovered by Gringott, the tyrant's eyes shone with a greed that transcended mere material covetousness. He had spent decades searching for the perfect ingredient for his darkest rituals, and now he knew he had found it. The living gold was not just precious. It was the key to the immortality that Vlad desperately sought. With this magical metal, he could forge artifacts capable of draining the life force of entire populations, create armies of the undead who would never know defeat, and establish an empire of darkness that would last for eternity. What followed was a conflict so brutal and devastating that the goblins themselves named it the War of the Golden Vaults. 3 decades and 3 years of carnage that decimated entire populations and transformed vast regions of Eastern Europe into a magical desert where even today nothing can grow properly. But Gringotts was not just a brave miner who had made an extraordinary discovery. He possessed a brilliant strategic mind, a leadership capacity that inspired absolute loyalty, and an instinctive knowledge about the defensive properties of enchanted gold that his descendants would inherit as if it were blood running through their veins. During the first years of the war, Gringotts transformed the Carpathian caves into a practically impenetrable underground fortress. Using the living gold, he created traps that reacted to the presence of dark magic, built barriers that self-regenerated when damaged, and forged weapons that burned dark creatures with a simple touch. In 1478, during a particularly bloody battle in what is now the German Black Forest, Gringotts made a decision that would change history. Instead of continuing to fight a war he could not win alone, he did something revolutionary. He sought out the Light Wizards. The secret negotiations in the catacombs of Kiev lasted 6 months. Gringotts proposed something unprecedented. If you cannot defeat us completely, and we do not have sufficient forces to win alone, why not unite our forces against the true enemy that threatens to destroy both our species? Thus was born the first concept of the modern magical bank. Not just a vault to store treasures, but an alliance of mutual protection. A blood pact between species that traditionally saw each other as natural enemies. The war culminated in 1491 with the Battle of the Carpathian Mountains, an epic confrontation that lasted 7 consecutive days and nights. Gringotts, now allied with the most powerful light wizards of Europe, had prepared a masterful trap for Vlad and his dark forces. Using all the enchanted gold he had extracted over decades, Gringotts created an underground labyrinth of colossal proportions, a network of tunnels and chambers that extended for more than 100 kilometers through the mountains. Each corridor was impregnated with the power of the living gold, creating an environment where dark magic became progressively weaker the deeper one penetrated the labyrinth. When Vlad and his army finally invaded the mountains, they found themselves trapped in a snare from which there was no escape. The enchanted gold not only weakened their powers, it also drastically amplified the strength of the Light Wizard's spells. The final battle took place in a giant chamber in the heart of the mountain, illuminated only by the golden glow of tons of living gold that pulsed like a giant heart. Vlad was finally defeated when Gringotts, in an act of heroic sacrifice, used his own blood to activate a massive amount of enchanted gold simultaneously. The explosion of pure energy that followed not only destroyed the Dark Wizard, but also permanently sealed the passages to the dark realms from which he had summoned his most terrible creatures. With the victory over Vlad and his forces, Gringotts now faced a new challenge: where to establish the headquarters of this new alliance between goblins and wizards. The Carpathian Mountains had been devastated by the war, and the enchanted gold needed a more stable environment to flourish properly. After months of deliberation with his new wizard allies, Gringotts made a decision that would change the course of magical history. He would lead what goblin historians call the Great Golden Migration, an epic journey that would take his people and their treasures to a new promised land. But it was not a simple move. The caravan faced attacks from wild dragons in Hungary, magical storms in the Swiss Alps, and even an attempted kidnapping by wizard pirates in the English Channel. With each challenge overcome, Gringotts' legend grew, and with it, the hope of a safer future for his people. London was not chosen by chance. The city was becoming the epicenter of European magical power, but Gringotts had discovered something that not even the local wizards knew. Beneath the streets of London existed a natural network of caves that extended for more than 200 kilometers, connected by underground water currents that amplified protection magic exponentially. A defense spell that would normally last a few days could be sustained for entire decades if it was anchored in these magical currents. It was as if the earth itself was offering the perfect location for the construction of the safest magical bank in history. Establishing the bank was paradoxically the most difficult part of Gringotts' entire journey. If defeating Vlad had required courage and military strategy, convincing the English wizards to accept a permanent partnership with the goblins required subtle diplomacy and almost superhuman patience. The negotiations extended for 5 torturous years, held in secret chambers of what would become the Ministry of Magic. There were moments when open war seemed not just probable, but inevitable. Radical factions among the wizards, led by elements who would later associate themselves with Salazar Slytherin during the founding of Hogwarts, vehemently argued that the goblins should be enslaved so that their secrets could be forcibly extracted. Why share power with inferior creatures when we can simply take what we need? Bellowed Cornelius Caro, ancestor of the family that centuries later would serve Lord Voldemort. They are just living tools to extract gold from the earth. It was then that the most dramatic moment in Gringotts' early history occurred. In 1496, during a particularly hostile session in what is now the Ministry of Magic, an attack by remnant dark wizards threatened to kill everyone present. Gringotts, without hesitation, used his own blood to activate enchanted gold protections that saved both goblins and wizards. This act of personal sacrifice changed everything. The Gringotts Pact was sealed not just with words, but with true blood. Gringotts and Ulick Gamp, the first Minister of Magic, cut their palms and mixed their blood in a chalice forged from the enchanted gold itself. When both drank from this mixture, something extraordinary happened. A magical bond formed not just between Gringotts and Gamp as individuals, but between the species they represented. This bond created a link of trust and mutual protection that transcended even death, a connection that endures to this day, and that is the true reason why Gringotts remains as the safest and most reliable financial institution of the magical world. Now, we arrive at the heart of Gringotts' mysteries, the depths that not even the oldest employees know completely. Prepare yourselves, because what you are going to discover goes far beyond simple gold vaults. With the Gringotts Pact officially established and sealed in blood, Gringotts now faced a challenge that would test not just his ingenuity, but also his understanding of the fundamental laws of spatial magic. How to build a bank that could serve not just the current magical community, but future generations for centuries or even millennia. The answer came in the form of one of the most ambitious magical undertakings ever attempted in history. The creation of a magically expanded space that would defy the very laws of physics. Using principles of spatial magic that the goblins had developed during centuries of excavation in underground dimensions, Gringotts began construction of what would come to be known as the Infinite Labyrinth of Gringotts. The initial project envisioned the excavation of only 50 underground levels, already an impressive quantity for the standards of the time. But as construction progressed, Gringotts discovered that the unique magical properties of London's subsoil allowed for an expansion far beyond what he had dreamed. The underground water currents not only amplified protection magic, they also created natural, dimensional pockets where space could be expanded without affecting the physical structure of the world above. Each time the goblin miners discovered one of these pockets, they could create chambers and corridors that were literally bigger on the inside than on the outside. Secret goblin records, kept for more than 500 years, reveal that Gringotts possesses at least 1,247 underground levels. Yes, you heard correctly, more than 1,200 floors descending into the depths of the earth. To put this in perspective, this means that the bank extends for more than 15 kilometers in depth. But here's the most frightening detail. The last 247 levels have never been completely mapped, not even by the goblins themselves. Some say that these depths connect with networks of natural caves that have existed since before magic itself. Others whisper that they are portals to parallel dimensions, where time functions differently. On level 800 underground floors that already defy imagination, is located the most extraordinary and mysterious chamber of the entire bank, what the goblins reverently call the Heart of Gringotts. This is not just a room, it is a living magical phenomenon that continues to evolve and modify itself after more than 500 years of existence. The chamber is a perfect sphere of 100 meters in diameter, suspended in the center of an even larger cavity through magical forces that defy all scientific understanding. Its walls are not made of stone or common metal. They are composed entirely of liquid gold that flows in perpetual motion, creating hypnotic patterns that constantly change and never repeat. But this is not common gold, not even enchanted gold in the traditional sense. It is gold that has been impregnated with the pure essence of temporal magic, allowing it to exist simultaneously in multiple states and dimensions. Trained observers can see not just the gold flowing in the present, but also echoes of its movement in the past and nebulous visions of how it will flow in the future. The most extraordinary phenomenon of the Heart of Gringotts are the crystallized memories, fragments of important historical moments that spontaneously materialize in the liquid gold and can be observed as if they were extremely detailed three-dimensional films. Imagine the excitement of being able to literally see Merlin's last words before his mysterious disappearance, observing his facial expression, hearing the exact tone of his voice, feeling the ancestral magic that emanated from his being in the final moments. Or witnessing Godric Gryffindor's intimate thoughts as he forged his legendary sword, seeing each hammer blow, each magical spark, each drop of sweat and tears that fell upon the sacred metal during the creation process. But prepare yourselves for something even more extraordinary. On levels 1000 to 1200, there exist the vaults of time, chambers where objects are not stored, but literal moments of history. Pieces of time itself, preserved in temporal crystals that shine with all the colors of the rainbow, and some that the human eye cannot even perceive. This is where things get really scary. These crystals allow historical events to be not just revisited, but altered. In theory, someone with access to these vaults could change the course of magical history. That's why only 3 goblins in all of Gringotts' existence have been permitted to descend to these levels, and all of them made blood oaths that prevent them from speaking about what they saw, even after death. In 1612, Gringotts faced its greatest internal crisis. A civil war so bloody and devastating that its records were deliberately erased from official history. But secret documents discovered only recently reveal a story of betrayal, manipulation, and heroism that forever changed the bank's structure. Griphook VII, great-great-grandson of the legendary founder, was a young idealist of only 127 years, practically a child by goblin standards. He questioned something fundamental. Why do we guard the wizard's treasures when they still treat us as inferior servants? What began as philosophical debates in the halls of level 50 quickly transformed into something much more dangerous. Griphook managed to convince more than 600 young goblins that it was time for a revolution. We are the ones who protect their treasures. Griphook began organizing secret meetings in the most obscure depths of the bank. The chosen location was the mysterious level 666, a floor that, according to goblin superstitions, had been cursed since its construction due to its ominous number. It was the perfect place for conspiracies, far enough from the surface to avoid detection, but not so deep as to enter the truly dangerous zones of the lower levels. In July 1612, the rebellion exploded. Griphook and his followers took control of levels 300 to 700, an area that included more than 10,000 vaults of some of the most powerful wizard families in Europe. For 6 torturous years, Gringotts operated divided in half, with 2 factions in open war. What happened during those 6 years was beyond any nightmare. Wizard clients were kidnapped and used as bargaining chips. Vaults were looted by the very guards who should have protected them. And most terrifying, rumors that guardian dragons had been magically corrupted to attack both sides ran wild through the magical world. In December 1617, during one of the reconnaissance incursions into territories controlled by the rebels, Gringotts, the peacemaker, decided to personally investigate the abandoned vaults of the Carrow family, a family that had withdrawn all its treasures from Gringotts in the first days of the rebellion, claiming they no longer trusted the bank's security. What Gringotts found in these supposedly empty vaults was much more than simple abandonment. There was shocking and irrefutable evidence that the rebellion was being secretly financed and manipulated by an external organization with interests far more sinister than the simple improvement of goblin conditions. Documents written on black parchment with silver ink, a combination traditionally associated with the most dangerous dark arts, revealed a diabolical plan of terrifying proportions. A cartel of dark wizards, composed of survivors and descendants of Vlad Tepesh's forces who had sworn revenge against Gringotts more than a century ago, had infiltrated agents among the rebel goblins. When Griphook discovered that he had been manipulated, that his noble revolution was just a puppet in the hands of malignant forces, something broke inside him. In the most sacred goblin tradition, he executed the ritual of golden expiation, voluntarily transforming his own body into pure enchanted gold to permanently seal the vaults he had profaned. To this day, on level 6666 of Gringotts, there exists a golden statue of Griphook with arms extended in a position of eternal protection. The goblins say that, on new moon nights, they can hear his voice whispering warnings about the dangers of uncontrolled ambition. We now arrive at one of the most fascinating and controversial aspects of Gringotts, the guardian dragons. But the truth about these majestic beings is infinitely more complex and exciting than you ever imagined. The history of Gringotts dragons begins in 1503 with Pyraxes, the Golden, a magnificent 400-year-old Ukrainian ironbelly who was being mercilessly hunted by Hungarian hunters who wanted his golden scales for immortality potions. With scales that shone like liquid gold under the sun, and a wingspan of more than 60 meters, he was considered one of the most beautiful and powerful dragons of his generation. Hungarian hunters specialized in magical creatures, hired by obscure alchemists seeking ingredients for immortality potions, had been pursuing Pyraxes for more than 2 years. They knew that the golden scales of a Ukrainian ironbelly, when combined with other rare ingredients, could create elixirs capable of extending human life for decades. The final hunt happened during a particularly severe winter storm. Pyraxes, weakened by months of constant pursuit and accumulated injuries, was finally cornered in a frozen ravine where he could not use his flight advantage. The hunters, using spears specially forged with blessed silver tips and ropes woven with Vela hair, managed to wound him gravely. The most lethal spear pierced his chest just below the heart, its cold iron impregnated with magical poisons that prevented the natural regeneration of dragons. Pyraxes was literally on the brink of death, his golden blood flowing like lava through the snowy fields, creating pools that melted the snow and made the earth smoke. It was in this moment of absolute despair that Gringotts II, son of the legendary founder, found the dying dragon during one of his reconnaissance expeditions to evaluate new mining locations. What he saw touched him in a way that transcended all species differences. A magnificent and proud creature reduced to agony, its golden eyes still shining with dignity even in the face of imminent death. Gringotts II could have simply continued on his way. Dragons and goblins did not have a history of positive relationship. In fact, many dragons saw goblins as lesser creatures, useful only for mining the treasures they wished to accumulate. But something in the situation deeply touched the young goblin's compassionate heart. Without hesitation, Gringotts II did something that no goblin had attempted before in recorded history. He used his own personal enchanted gold that had been purified with his own father's blood during the Gringotts Pact, to try to heal Pyraxes' mortal wounds. The process was extraordinarily dangerous. Healing a dragon using enchanted gold required Gringotts II to literally place his hands in the open wounds, allowing the precious metal to flow directly into the gigantic creature's bloodstream. A wrong reaction from the dragon, a sudden movement, a reflexive breath of fire could have incinerated the goblin instantly. But Pyraxes, even in his agony, recognized the pure intention behind the gesture. He remained completely motionless during the entire healing process, his eyes fixed on the small goblin who was risking his own life to save a stranger. What happened during that healing went far beyond simple medical magic. The enchanted gold, impregnated with the essence of the Gringotts Pact and purified through generations of goblin sacrifice, created a mystical connection between Pyraxes and Gringotts II that transcended all natural barriers between species. When the gold entered the dragon's bloodstream, it not only healed the physical wounds, it created a soul bond that allowed both beings to feel each other's emotions, thoughts, and even memories. For some extraordinary moments, Gringotts II experienced what it was like to fly through the clouds with powerful wings, while Pyraxes felt the deep satisfaction of creating something beautiful and lasting with one's own hands. This connection revealed surprising truths for both creatures. Gringotts II discovered that dragons were not the greedy and stupid beasts that many believed. They were deeply intelligent beings, with a rigorous code of honor and an understanding of magic that rivaled that of the wisest wizards. Pyraxes, in turn, realized that goblins possessed a nobility of spirit and a dedication to protection that he had never imagined possible in such small creatures. When the healing was completed and Pyraxes could rise again, his scales shining with an even more intense golden light due to the infusion of enchanted gold, he did something that echoed through the magical dimensions and would be remembered by all future generations of dragons and goblins. Pyraxes lowered his majestic head until it was at eye level with Gringotts II, his golden pupils reflecting the goblin's soul like perfect mirrors. When he spoke, his deep voice resonated not just in the ears, but directly in the heart of his savior. Small warrior with a golden heart, you have given me more than life. You have given me restored honor and renewed purpose. My existence, my strength, my fury. All of this I offer in eternal protection to you and the treasures you guard. As long as there is gold in Gringotts pulsing with life, there will be dragon fire to protect it. This oath I make, not just for myself, but for all my lineage, for all my descendants, until the end of time. The oath was sealed when Pyraxes deliberately cut his own paw with a claw, allowing a few drops of his golden blood to fall upon Gringotts II's hands. The blood, still impregnated with the enchanted gold from the healing, created permanent golden marks on the goblin's palms, marks that glowed whenever he was in the presence of dragons, and that would be magically passed to all his descendants. But here's the most extraordinary part. When a Gringotts dragon dies, whether by age, battle or sacrifice, its soul doesn't simply disappear. It merges with the very structure of the bank, impregnating the gold of the walls, the crystals of the vaults, even the air we breathe in the deepest corridors. That's why the oldest vaults of Gringotts seem alive, because they literally are. They are imbued with the essence of more than 200 dragons who gave their lives over the centuries to protect the treasures. When you feel that shiver when passing through an ancient corridor of the bank, it's not just imagination. You're feeling the spiritual presence of ancestral guardians. This deep understanding of the mystical nature of Gringotts dragons allows us to completely reinterpret the famous event of 1998, when Harry Potter, Ron Weasley, and Hermione Granger freed the Guardian Dragon during their mission to retrieve the Hufflepuff Cup. What the magical world interpreted as a simple escape was in reality a much deeper and more significant phenomenon. The dragon in question, a female Ukrainian ironbelly who had lost her sight due to decades of forced captivity, was not just any guardian randomly chosen to protect the most secure vaults. Documents recently discovered in Gringotts' most secret archives reveal her true identity: Pyrithia, direct great-granddaughter of Pyraxes I and bearer of the purest and most powerful lineage of guardian dragons in the bank's history. Pyrithia had been chosen to guard the Lestrange family vault not just for her impressive physical strength, but because she possessed a unique mystical connection with dark artifacts. Her genetic heritage from Pyraxes, combined with centuries of exposure to Gringotts' enchanted gold, had developed in her an almost supernatural ability to detect and neutralize dark magic. When Harry Potter touched Pyrithia's skin during the escape, something extraordinary happened that neither he nor his companions fully understood at the time. The touch was not casual. It was the fulfillment of an ancient prophecy inscribed in the most secret records of the Guardian Dragons, a prophecy that said, "When the one chosen by magic touches the golden heart of the ancestral guardian, the cycle will complete, and new guardians will be born from the ashes of the old." Pyrithia's liberation was not a breaking of her oaths or a betrayal of her responsibility. It was an awakening, an ancestral call so powerful that it temporarily suspended her mystical bonds with Gringotts, allowing her to return to her wild origins, to completely regenerate and be reborn as an even more powerful version of herself. Ultra-secret records indicate that Pyrithia did not simply fly to freedom and disappear into nature, as the official version of events suggests. 3 months after her escape, she voluntarily returned to Gringotts, but not as the blind and weakened creature who had been freed. The awakening had completely restored her vision, regenerated her damaged scales, and most impressive of all, developed in her magical abilities that no guardian dragon had demonstrated before. She could now communicate telepathically with all the bank's goblins simultaneously, detect magical threats at distances of hundreds of kilometers, and even manifest multiple spectral versions of herself to protect various levels of the bank at the same time. Pyrithia became what the goblins call the Supreme Guardian, a position that did not exist before her transformation. She now resides in the deepest levels of Gringotts, in the mysterious floors below 1000, where she serves as the last line of defense against threats that could destroy not just the bank, but the entire structure of the global magical economy. The best-known episode in Gringotts' recent history, the 1998 invasion to retrieve the Hufflepuff Cup, represents only the visible tip of an iceberg of terror that remained hidden from public knowledge for decades. Ultra-secret documents, released only in 2018, 20 years after Voldemort's fall, through a historical review ordered by the Ministry of Magic, reveal a truth that will freeze your blood in your veins. Tom Riddle, even before completely transforming into Lord Voldemort, had identified Gringotts as the greatest obstacle to his plans for total domination of the magical world. Not just because the bank guarded treasures he desired, but because the very existence of such a powerful and independent institution represented a direct threat to the absolute control he sought to establish. Between 1970 and 1998, Voldemort organized not one, but 17 documented attempts to penetrate Gringotts' defenses. Each invasion was more sophisticated and terrifying than the previous one, representing a gradual escalation of violence and malignant ingenuity that tested the limits of the bank's protections in ways that its creators had never imagined. More shocking still, 7 of these attempts were partially successful, causing structural and magical damage that the wizarding world never knew about. The records reveal that Gringotts spent astronomical fortunes and sacrificed dozens of lives, both goblins and dragons, to secretly repair the damage and maintain a facade of invulnerability that was crucial for the stability of the global magical economy. Voldemort's first truly successful invasion happened in 1979, 4 years before the attempt the world knows about. This operation was conducted with diabolical sophistication that demonstrated how much Voldemort had evolved his techniques since his first brutal and direct attempts. Voldemort had spent months studying the habits and vulnerabilities of Ricbert, discovering that the goblin had an almost obsessive passion for ancient and rare coins. It was an apparently harmless weakness that would become the key to one of the most devastating infiltrations in history. The technique that Voldemort developed for this operation was as ingenious as it was terrifying. Gold coins impregnated with fragments of his own soul, primitive prototypes of the Horcruxes he would create later, but specifically designed for gradual mental corruption instead of soul preservation. These cursed coins were created through a ritual that required the sacrifice of 13 innocent wizards, each killed in a specific phase of the moon during a period of 1 complete year. The gold used in the forging was extracted from ancient tombs, impregnated with the agony of the dead, and refined through alchemical processes that defied the very laws of nature. The final result were coins that appeared completely normal to conventional magical tests, but that contained a curse of extraordinary complexity. When a goblin touched these coins during an apparently innocent transaction, the curse spread through his nervous system like a microscopic magical poison, not just controlling his actions, but gradually infecting his own thoughts, desires, and even dreams. The process was deliberately slow and subtle. During the first weeks, Ricbert noticed no change in himself. Gradually, however, he began to feel a growing curiosity about the artifacts he guarded. Small, intrusive thoughts about what it would be like to examine more closely some of the most dangerous objects. Fantasies about the power these artifacts could grant to someone brave enough to use them. For 3 years, Ricbert systematically opened specific vaults where dark artifacts confiscated by the Ministry over the centuries were stored. What Voldemort found in these vaults completely changed the course of the First Wizarding War. Scrolls with forbidden spells created by the founders of Hogwarts themselves, including curses that Salazar Slytherin had considered excessively cruel, even for his standards. Potions of temporary immortality that allowed surviving mortal wounds for entire weeks. And most terrifying of all, a complete map, updated in real time, of all the secret hideouts of the Order of the Phoenix members. That's how Voldemort managed to find and assassinate so many members of the original Order. It wasn't just through spies or betrayals. He had a magical map that showed exactly where his enemies were at every moment. The truth was only discovered in 1982, when Ricbert finally succumbed to the side effects of the cursed gold. His physical body survived, but his mind completely fragmented. Rickbert was found on level 234 of Gringotts by a colleague who was looking for him after his inexplicable absence of 3 days. What they found was terrifying. Rickbert's physical body had survived, but his mind had completely fragmented into disconnected pieces of memory and personality. He babbled incoherently, alternating between his original personality, confused and terrified about where he was, and echoes of Voldemort's thoughts that had been implanted through the curse. "The gold whispers secrets of death," he murmured repeatedly. "The vault's dream of traitor's blood. The Dark Master sees through my eyes, always seeing, always hating, always killing." The most shocking discovery came only recently in 2018, when the healers of St. Mungo's finally managed to develop mental healing techniques based on the study of Voldemort's destroyed Horcruxes. Using knowledge acquired through the analysis of the soul fragments that had been separated from Harry Potter, they managed to partially restore Rickbert's sanity. For a few precious hours before his natural death from old age, Rickbert recovered sufficient mental clarity to report the complete details of his manipulation. His revelations were even more terrifying than anyone had imagined. Voldemort had not just used Rickbert to steal artifacts. He had implanted false memories that made the goblin believe he was conducting legitimate transactions authorized by superior supervisors. Rickbert lived for 3 years completely convinced that he was doing his normal work, while in reality he was systematically delivering the most powerful weapons of the British magical arsenal directly to his greatest enemy. More terrifying still, Rickbert revealed that the cursed coins had not completely lost their power after their discovery. Even decades later, he could still occasionally hear mental whispers that seemed to come from some remnant vestige of Voldemort's consciousness, promising power and revenge to anyone willing to search for similar artifacts. His last conscious words, recorded by the healers and sealed in the Ministry's most secret archives, were a prophetic warning that still haunts magical security experts. He will return, not the body, not the person, but the ambition. The gold always remembers, the gold always whispers, and there are more hidden coins than you imagine. Many more. Prepare yourselves to learn Gringotts' best-kept secret. Something so extraordinary that it defies our very understanding of reality. In the deepest levels of the bank exist vaults that do not belong to people, families, or even organizations. They belong to abstract concepts, pure ideas that gained physical form through centuries of belief and concentrated magic. These are the conceptual vaults, created by the first goblins as a way to protect the very qualities that make magic possible. Imagine, how would you store courage in a vault? How would you protect wisdom from being stolen? How would you preserve true love for future generations? The most famous and philosophically complex of the conceptual vaults is the Vault of Destiny, located on the mysterious level 999, a floor that technically exists within Gringotts. But that seems to follow physical laws slightly different from the rest of the bank. This is an octagonal chamber where each wall is constructed of a different crystal, each representing one of the 8 fundamental forces that the goblins believe govern the destiny of all living beings. Choice, blue crystal that pulses with soft light when important decisions are being made. Consequence, red crystal that shows nebulous visions of the results of past actions. Chance, transparent crystal that randomly changes color. Necessity, black crystal that absorbs light but emanates a sense of inevitability. Will, golden crystal that shines more intensely in the presence of strong determination. Resistance, silver crystal that becomes harder when pressure is applied. Acceptance, green crystal that emanates a deep and calming peace. And transformation, multicolored crystal that constantly changes shape and appearance. Within this extraordinary vault are stored artifacts that literally shaped the course of magical history. They are not objects that influenced important events. They are objects that created those events, channeling the forces of destiny in ways that the original participants never fully understood. Within this vault are stored objects that literally shaped the course of magical history. The phoenix feather that wrote the prophecy about Harry Potter, a feather that glows with its own light when destiny is being fulfilled. The millennial dragon bone die that determined the house of each Hogwarts founder, a die that shows different symbols with each roll, never repeating the same result. The temporal gold coin that decided which side would win the first war against darkness. A coin that still spins in the air, eternally suspended between heads and tails. Some magical artifact experts speculate that the Elder Wand itself originated in this vault, not as a created object, but as a physical manifestation of the pure concept of supreme magical power. When this concept became strong enough through the collective belief of thousands of wizards, it materialized in the form of the most powerful wand ever known. But of all the conceptual vaults, none is more powerful or dangerous than the Vault of True Love. Located on level 1001, this vault does not store physical objects, but crystallized feelings, emotions so pure and intense that they became tangible, shining like living jewels that pulse with the rhythm of passionate hearts. Here are preserved moments such as the first kiss between Godric Gryffindor and Rowena Ravenclaw during the construction of Hogwarts, a golden and blue crystal that radiates warmth and wisdom simultaneously. Lily Potter's sacrifice for her son, a red gem that shines with the protective force of the purest maternal love. Dobby's unwavering loyalty, crystallized in a small green stone that whispers words of encouragement to those who feel lost and alone. But opening the Vault of True Love has a terrible price. They say that whoever manages to open this vault will receive the power to heal any broken heart, to unite soulmates separated by destiny, to awaken true love, where before there was only indifference. But they will also carry forever the emotional weight of all the lost loves of history, each broken heart, each final goodbye, each what if that never became reality. Only two people in history have tried to open the Vault of True Love. The first was Helena Ravenclaw, who sought her mother's forgiveness after stealing the diadem. She managed to open the vault, but died instantly. Not from physical pain, but from an emotional overload so intense that her heart simply could not bear the magnitude of all the loves of history flowing through her simultaneously. The second was, well, that's a story for another video. And so we arrive at the end of this extraordinary journey through the depths of Gringotts. But like every good mystery story, some questions remain unanswered, some secrets continue guarded in the shadows of the deepest levels. With Voldemort's fall, Gringotts underwent its greatest transformation in 5 centuries. New protections were implemented, including spells that detect not just malicious intentions, but the very latent capacity for evil in visitors' hearts. Traditional dragons were partially replaced by even more exotic and powerful creatures. But new dangers materialize on the horizon. Rumors whisper about a shadowy organization called the New Golden Order, a group of renegade wizards and goblins who believe that Gringotts has accumulated too much power over the centuries. They don't plan to rob the bank. They want to destroy it completely, releasing all its secrets at once and creating the chaos necessary to reshape the magical world according to their own distorted visions. Furthermore, the recent discovery of synthetic gold created by Muggle alchemists threatens the very economic foundation of the wizarding world. How will Gringotts adapt to a world where its most precious commodity can be artificially created? Some speculate that the goblins have already developed a response involving the mysterious vaults of time and the ability to literally buy additional time to solve crises before they happen. Gringotts continues to be the last bastion of secrets in an increasingly connected and transparent world. in its deepest vaults, still await discoveries that could revolutionize not just magic, but our very understanding of reality. The complete map of all parallel magical worlds, the location of the lost wizarding Atlantis, the true secret names of the Hogwarts founders, and even the coordinates to other dimensions where magic functions under completely different laws. But perhaps it's better that some secrets remain sealed. Some doors were closed for good reasons. Some knowledge was buried to protect not just the magical world, but the very sanity of those who would dare to unravel them. One thing, however, is certain. As long as there is magic pulsing through the veins of the earth, as long as there are wizards dreaming of treasures and adventures, Gringotts will remain as their most faithful, most ruthless, and most mysterious guardian. The next time you pass through Diagon Alley and glimpse that majestic white marble building rising against the London sky, remember, you are not just contemplating a bank. You are looking at 1,000 years of history crystallized in stone and gold, blood and tears, betrayals and loyalties that shape the very destiny of the magical world. Each column of that facade was erected with the sweat of goblins who dreamed of a better future. Each protection was woven with sacrifices of dragons who chose loyalty above freedom. Each vault guards not just material treasures, but pieces of the wizarding civilization's soul. And perhaps, just perhaps, when you look at those ancient windows that reflect the setting sun's light, you will manage to hear the distant echo of all the stories we live together today. The clinking of enchanted gold coins, the whisper of secrets guarded for centuries, the distant roar of guardian dragons protecting their eternal treasures. And if you've made it this far, it's because you are true fans of extraordinary stories. So click on the bell to not miss any of our next dives into the mysteries of the magical world, and subscribe to not miss the next stories. We have many more incredible stories waiting for you. Thank you for embarking on this extraordinary adventure with me. Until the next mystery, and remember, magic is everywhere for those who know where to look.